True Crime Screening Room is a presentation of Podcast Picks with Jim the Podcast Sherpa. Please keep in mind that some of the topics discussed might be too intense for younger or sensitive listeners. Even Jim the Podcast Sherpa conducts some of these interviews while hiding under his desk, all while holding a stuffed mountain lion named Mr. Wubby.
Welcome to True Crime Screening Room, the podcast featuring interviews with creators who dedicate their work to unraveling true crime mysteries. We're now entering the investigation room in the Sherpa Chalet to meet your host, Jim the Podcast Sherpa.
Hello there, rebels of the Sherpolution, and welcome to True Crime Screening Room. It is a side project of Podcast Picks with Jim the Podcast Sherpa. That's me. Hello, coming to you from Sherpaloo Studios here in the Sherpa Chalet, high atop Mount Podcastia, where I overlook the millions and millions of podcasts that are out there. And you know, there are lots and lots of true crime podcasts that are out there. But on this show, I also get to talk to true crime authors as well, and that is what's going on this week. My guest is a guy named Dennis Carson. He lives out in California. He's worked with a lot of really important people in the field of law and law enforcement. This is his second book, and it is called Every Killer Leaves a Trace. And obviously, it is a story of many serial killers and what finally led law enforcement to apprehend them. I've had a preview of the book, and I have to tell you, it's very factual. It's very straightforward. It can be a little gruesome. And even Dennis admitted that. He said it kind of pained him to tell some of these stories because they were just so disgusting, you know, considering how depraved some of these murderers were. And we talked about that and a lot of the things that are in the book. So why don't we head on over to the True Crime Screening Room, and you can listen to my conversation with author Dennis Carson of Every Killer Leaves a Trace. Hello there, rebels. We are here in the True Crime Screening Room. My guest today is coming to us from the lovely state of California. His name is Dennis Carson. His latest book is called Every Killer Leaves a Trace, and it is a story about 26 different serial killers and how eventually they got caught through one way or the other, through forensics or through slip-ups or one way or the other, and really a testament to the forensic science and to the law investigators. Dennis, welcome to the show.
All right. So a little bit about me.
Okay.
I'm on the West Coast.
Okay.
And I live with my girlfriend of nearly 4 decades. We have a 140-pound gentle giant dog. We call her a gentle giant because if we let her in the house, she's going to lick you to death. And walk in unannounced, you won't believe it. Just that simple. Anyway, so a little bit about me. I have collaborated for years with Ed Winter, the renowned LA County coroner to the stars. He's done the cases of Whitney Houston, Michael Jackson, Kobe Bryant, Nipsey Hussle, and God knows how many more. As I said, I have collaborated with administrative law judge, and I also work closely with Dottie Owen. She's the renowned former Idaho coroner, and Lila Evans, Alabama's current coroner. I work with Dr. Wesley Jennings. He's one of the foremost criminologists in the world, and Dr. Ashley Wallman. She's a certified forensic death investigator. So that's the team that supports me. And a little bit about history. A few years ago, under the pen name of John Water, I published a book called Bonded Through Injustice. It was critically acclaimed as a true crime book rooted in real-life smoking gun cases. Specifically, it centered on the first federal death penalty case in Orange County, California. It garnered widespread acclaim because it was in-depth and thorough. And I've applied that same kind of meticulous research and narrative intensity to this book. So as the years have gone by, I've also worked with Fremantle Media probably them, research, development, scripted projects, and investigative contents for about 30 or 40 cases. I've written and co-produced true crime sizzle reel for 2 unsolved cases in Buffalo, New York, which Fremantle was going to do, and I own the rights to it. I'm now going to turn it into possibly a book and maybe a TV series.
Okay.
Anyway, and now along comes Every Killer Leaves a Trace. Every Killer Leaves a Trace is about 85,000 words. And what it does, it explores the final act and critical mistakes that led to the capture of 26, as you said, America's most elusive killers. These people were not obscure grifters, Jim. They were verbal murderers, their fathers, boyfriends, neighbors. I mean, they blended in with society. It was amazing. People didn't even know they were living with a killer. It's that crazy. And they got away with it for decades. But in the end, it was their own compulsions that betrayed them. Every Killer Leaves a Trace reconstructs the key moment that led to the killer's unraveling, whether that was a daring final murder, an overlooked witness, or a long, dormant, forensic clue. So with my sources that I mentioned earlier, as well as court transcripts, autopsy reports, public records, and first-hand interviews, that's how I wrote the book.
And, we might add that, in this list of 26, there are some that probably the public have heard of, like John Wayne Gacy, of course, the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez, the Dating Game Killer, and the Hillside Stranglers. But there were a lot, just looking at the headings of the chapters, there were serial killers I had never heard of that had just as gruesome stories to tell.
Yeah, they like I said, they slipped by.
Yeah.
Because they were just part of society. You didn't realize that your next door neighbor was just your people's killer. That's just that crazy. And some of the cases are absolutely disgusting. You have to read the book. I'd rather not talk about it because it's made of people. But some of the things that these killers did, was so obnoxious that, like my girlfriend, she read it, she goes, "Come on, really? They did that?" Yeah, they did that. She said, "You know what? That guy wouldn't be walking out alive if that was me." But anyway, and there were some interesting cases. As an example, Cameron Booker, he's known for The Girl in the Box.
Mm-hmm.
And what he did is Cameron and his wife, they found this girl hitchhiking on the side of the road. So they offered her a ride, and the girl thought it was okay because his wife had a little baby in her arm. So it looked kosher. Anyway, they got home. He put her in a handmade wooden casket. That's what I'll call it. And she was in that casket or box for 3 years. She slept in that box. He let her out once a day to use the restroom, and she ate once a day peanut butter and crackers. And then he tortured her. He hung her up in the rafters and beat her. And it was just totally disgusting. But that's what these killers are about.
Yeah.
They're obnoxious, Certainly would invite them to your dinner party.
That's for sure. There was one that I noticed in the book. He was called the Amazon Review Killer. And that really had nothing to do with Amazon. So, but he kidnapped the one woman with her partner, and he killed the partner, and he tortured the woman. And he took her phone and posted on social media that they had gotten married and they ran off, make everybody, not worry about why they hadn't heard from them.
It was crazy. And how he got the name of the Amazon serial killer.
Yeah.
Every kill that he did, he posted on Amazon about what he did and would you like to buy. He offered for sale their clothes, their cars. It was just unbelievable.
Like you said, how exactly do these people slip by unnoticed when they're doing things like that? You would think there'd be something that would, set off a red flag saying, something's right here.
Well, in his case, he had a huge property, unbelievable. I can't remember how many acres. I want to say 30 or 40 acres. And it was all fenced off and nobody came in, nobody went out. And so he had this privacy and he was able to do what he did unnoticed for years.
It's still scary. I was wondering, when I was looking at the list of killers that you profiled, do you think that they were obsessed with getting around being detected, or you think they just knew how to stay under the radar and just do what they did?
I think it was a little bit of both.
Okay.
Some of them were sharp enough to figure out how to stay below the radar. But other ones, I think it was just plain luck. That's all there is to it. They just got away with it. I think the classic example of that is this guy called the tagged killer, Haley Weaver. He used social media to lure women. So he was kosher insofar as social media was concerned. His profile was perfectly kosher. He looked normal and all of that. Once he got him, good luck. It was all over.
Well, then I guess really the same could be said with Bundy, right? They said that he was very charismatic around people.
Yeah.
As opposed to maybe some of these others who were probably they just had a sadistic streak right off. They had a sadistic streak right off the bat, and they just said, well, I know there's this section of woods where, nobody really goes. And if I take my victims there, nobody's going to realize it till I'm long gone.
That's correct.
It is very scary. What was the story out of the ones in the book that really fascinated you the most?
I actually have two or three. Bundy obviously was very fascinating. But I think the guy that really made me think twice was, let's see if I can find his name for you, Brian Lee Colby. He was known as the university student rapist. So he was a repeat offender. And what he did is he hung around the Ohio campus colleges in Ohio, and he would abduct a young girl, rape her, and then strangle her to death. So on the surface, what seemed to be this really nice guy who discovered this woman who may have lost her keys or her ride left early from the concert, or to college. And hey, I'll give you a ride. And he looked normal, didn't look in any way, like a killer. Of course, what a killer looked like. Anyway,
Yes.
Right. And he got away with it for years and years and years. There's others that just drive you crazy, like Tommy Lynn Sills, the coast to coast killer. He drifted from one city to the other, state to the other. And let me tell you another one. We're looking here, the guys that really got me. Oh yeah, the car burning killer, Kyle Yost. Now he's an interesting one because after he kidnapped and tortured and murdered a girl, he would set their car on fire. Why? Okay, why? You've already done your deed, right?
Right.
What is the car going on, lighting it on fire? What does that have to do with your deed?
So it was that maybe in their mind they figure, well, there's no evidence, but really ultimately there is.
There is, yeah.
But there really is no perfect crime, though, when you think about it, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He got away with it. He absolutely got away with it. Adam Leroy Lane, known as the highway killer. This guy was a very strange bird. He was a truck driver and he went from state to state and he would knock on doors. And if nobody answered, he looked to see if there was a car in the garage or in the driveway or whatever. And if nobody was home, he would just walk away, move on to another house. He was interested in doing damage. He was interested in killing people. He wasn't interested in robbing them. Didn't want anything to do with anything other than killing them. So he came upon this one house and the door was unlocked. He went in and he was a big guy, but he didn't know who he ran up against. The father was even bigger. He nailed him to the wall, beat the guy to a pulp. The wife came in. She finished the job, so to speak, but he tried to molest the guy's daughter. And that's when he went nuts. He said, okay, look you could rob me. You can have anything in the house. You can have my wallet. You can have the car. You touch my daughter. You're not going to walk out of here alive. The guy started laughing. Said, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to rape your daughter. And that did it.
Wow.
That pushed the button.
Yeah. Like you said, I guess, they've all got something that drives them, really. And it's not trying to commit a perfect crime. It's just getting these urges out, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. Some of them went months, weeks, years. There was the guy, let me get his correct name. He was the railroad killer, Angel Resendez. He hopped freight trains, freight cars, and he went from city and state robbing and killing people. Nobody really knows the total number of murders. The estimate is somewhere around 24.
Wow.
Yeah. And he was finally caught through some really good investigative work on the part of two detectives that just wouldn't back off. They wouldn't let go. And they were not in that jurisdiction, but they managed to get approval to work in that jurisdiction, and they caught him. They caught him on a one-way bridge, by the way, which is interesting. He decided he was going to try and get somewhere else, so he was going to go across this bridge. Little did he know that they were waiting for him on the other end of the bridge.
Yeah, some of them aren't really too bright, I guess.
He wouldn't rate their IQ, that's for sure.
I remember when I was younger, I don't really know all the facts behind this. I remember someone telling me a story about there was there were two guys that met on the beach for a drug deal, and the drug deal went south. So one guy killed the other, and he cut off the guy's head so no one would know who it was. And he ran off. Oh, when police investigated, trying to figure out who this guy was, he had his wallet in his pocket, so they knew exactly who he was.
Yeah, that's the thing I was trying to convey earlier. Some of them make the dumbest mistake. I mean, it's pretty bad, really.
Yeah. Still sad and scary, though, but they're just, they'll never be known as, criminal masterminds, I guess.
No, that's absolutely right. And let me tell you a funny story. This is actually a true case I'm going to talk to you about.
Okay.
I didn't include it in the book because it's a one-off case. Now, this happened in Los Angeles, and it happened to involve my late dear friend, Ed Witter, in the coroner.
Okay.
So here's what happened. One morning early, he was in there because he had to do an autopsy early to get results to the DA by noon. So for whatever reason, he saw the phone flashing. He picked it up. He never would do that, but he did pick it up. This guy, his name is David Beans, and he was a chef in a restaurant in San Fernando Valley. So he said, "Who's this?" And Ed said, "I'm Ed Witter, the coroner." And he said, "I have to tell you something." He said, "I have been chopping up my wife into pieces. I've been boiling her overnight in the huge vats that I use in the kitchen at the restaurant. And as I'm speaking to you, I'm eating her heart."
Oof.
Well, needless to say, Ed already had the cops on the phone, and the whole thing was going on. So as it turned out, that afternoon or early afternoon, I had lunch scheduled with Ed. So we sat down at the table, and there's a great French dip restaurant in LA called Felipe's. And we always used to meet at Felipe's for lunch. So that afternoon we met. Ed sat down. He said, "I'm dying to tell you the story." "Okay, lay it on me." So he goes through the whole thing. And he looks at me, and I said, "Are you done?" He goes, "Yeah." I go, "I have a question." He says, "What's the question?" "Did you happen to ask him if he made a side dish to go with the arm?"
Ouch. I don't believe that wasn't the restaurant either.
Because, that thing, it's a very gruesome situation, these killers. And sometimes, I have a hard time going to sleep at night. But there's also some humor to it because some of them are so stupid that you got to wonder, how did they get away with the first 18 murders? How did they do it? Because they're dumb.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, your book, also along with all the details of all of these serial murders and, the grisly details, it really pays tribute to the different law enforcement agencies working together and the forensics people and everything like that as well, which I know that was like the goal of yours with writing the book. And one case that I was interested about that, I know that people have probably heard of the Hillside Stranglers. How did they find out that it was ultimately two people instead of one?
Here's what happened. The first guy, got to get his name correct for you, Bianchi was supposed to do whatever he was doing, and he committed a murder, but he unfortunately managed to slip up, and he told Angelo Bono about it. And he showed up because he wanted to participate in it. So if he hadn't shown up, he probably would have never gotten caught.
Holy cow.
I go back to, they're not exactly Einstein.
Yeah. Are there any out there that seem to really elude any sort of solid investigation, or that they're really outsmarting the police where they just cannot do anything that we know of?
I haven't found one. No. There's, in the relationship I had with Ed before he died, is that he would talk to me about any case that was active. If it was a case that the LAPD was working on but hadn't closed, we had an agreement. No talking. Because I could flip up and say something and blow the case wide open. So that's what we did. And, with the judge that I work with, she has a couple cases that are mind blown. And they're okay. She has a relative that is also that she used to be a DA in New York. Her sister is still a DA. They have a case that I have entwined with her to possibly write about. It is so disgusting. I can't get into it because the case, they're still prosecuting.
Right.
But let me tell you, Jim, it is so disgusting what this guy did. And he is the epitome of blending in with society. He is a member of the country club. He has a yacht and he cruises along the lake and blah, 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 hosts these huge dinner parties, etc. The guy just don't blow a pillar, period.
Right. I guess they figure, that no one's going to look at them because they, like you say, because they blend so well into society. But in reality, they really don't.
Yeah, that's right. That's very true.
Because like any forthcoming work that you have, that's usually depending on the issues that your cohorts are working with, right? That are, if you decide if it's worth the story or not, is that how you usually approach writing your books? Is that like you do another book like this?
I have one that I have been working on. I'm about a month away from submitting it.
Okay.
Let me tell you the cases. So we have a 20-year-old girl. Both cases happened in New York. Okay, so this 20-year-old girl was naked, upside down, in a trash can with the lid closed in 19-degree weather for 21 days. The coroner ruled it accidental death. I don't think so.
Yes. It doesn't sound like a likely fall into a trash can, well, buck naked in the winter.
But here's the second one. And they both tie to the coroner who just recently, last 6 months, has resigned because she said that she was pressured by county officials to lie about the cause of death, manner of death. Okay. So my book is bringing it out that it wasn't suicide, and I'm proving it. But second case, now this is the one that really gets me. There was this priest. He was a neighborhood priest. He would stick in his hand in his pocket if the parishioner didn't have money for her rent, and the person money for rent, he'd buy the family food. He was just the greatest priest, neighborhood priest. Okay. His name was Father Joe. So Father Joe, had an accident with his left hand a few years back, and he couldn't use his left hand. In fact, he couldn't even hold the chalice for communion. A choir boy, altar boy had to hold the chalice for him.
Okay.
All right. So he was 2 days away from going to the head of the diocese to spill the beans on $500,000 that was missing in church funds and on about 6 priests who had molested little boys. He was found one afternoon in the rectory. He was in his recliner and he was shot on the left side of his head. So tell me how a right-handed person can shoot themselves on the left side of the head. Let's assume you can do it for the moment. Let's assume you can, all right? That gun, when it goes off, is going to fly. And when it flies, it's not going to land in your lap. And that's where the gun was, in his lap, when they found it. To compound the felony, so to speak, that gun, that gun belonged to the Buffalo Police Department in the evidence room.
Ooh. You got yourself some book there, Dennis.
Yeah, that's a good one, isn't it?
Yeah.
I know personal, and I've had God knows how many conversations with the priest's twin sister and the mother of the young girl. And we talked, both of them have cried. It's been a very traumatic 4-year relationship I've had. And over the years, I didn't want to write this and right off the bat because I wanted to make sure I had everything. And I interviewed, I can't tell you, Jim, how many people I interviewed. I've got it now. The case is closed as far as I'm concerned. So the coroner, her name is Diane Bertie, she lied. There were 2 murders. They weren't suicides.
Oh, yeah. So, you said it took you 4 years to work on this, but how long did it take you to write Every Killer Leaves a Trace?
Every Killer Leaves a Trace took me about, I'm going to say 5 months. because I had to go back. The thing about every killer leaves a trace is it is absolutely fact. There's nothing fictionalized whatsoever.
Right.
If the guy drove a blue car, I have the blue car. I mean, that kind of perfection in super detail. But I had to interview most of the detectives, most of the cops, the DA. They're very cooperative. And so the book came to pass without any, glitches.
Mm-hmm.
Now on the new, and so that's why we called it Every Killer Leaves a Trace, because we found those traces.
Sure. All right. So if people want to find out more about you, Dennis, and your work, is there any place on the internet where they can look?
I have a Facebook page just called Dennis Carson.
Okay.
And you can find out a little bit about me there. And the new book is going to be called They Got It Wrong. But they got it wrong.
Yeah. I would totally agree with you, Sarah, judging by the information that you just presented right here. We'll let everybody know that the book that is out is called Every Killer Leaves a Trace. And again, my guest has been Dennis Carson, who is the author. And thank you so much for coming on the show.
You're very, very welcome, Jim. Thank you so much for having me. And if you would like a copy of the new book before it comes out to read it, I'd be happy to forward it to you.
Thank you.
Listen and subscribe on podcast apps everywhere. And we're on YouTube at Chirpolution. Sorry, no video. You're welcome.
Thanks so much to Dennis Carson for coming on the show. And as we do with all of the true crime authors, the link to his book will be below in the show notes. If you're looking at your podcast player, it'll be there, I promise you. Along with a lot of other interesting information about this show as well, including our 2 new link pages. We are on Linktree/Chirpolution and chirp.me Chirpolution as well. So that's where you can find out all of our social links and other podcast players that are playing this, just in case you don't like that current podcast player you are listening to. You might say, bah, I need a new one. I don't know if you might say, bah, but who knows? Anyway, in case you are also looking at the podcast player that you are listening to the show on, you may have noticed that this is episode 25, and that means that the season is just about over. And that also means that next week we will be doing a mini episode where we do season 14 wrap-up, where we acknowledge all of our guests, and I talk about some podcasts that I've been checking out that maybe you would like to add to your podcast playlist, and a few other things too that we really need to discuss as well. So thanks again, and until then, I say to you, Viva la Chirpolution!
Thanks for listening to True Crime Screening Room. Subscribe to the show on podcast apps or the Chirpolution YouTube page. Until then, stay away from evil. And more important, Viva la Chirpolution.